We know all the work that we put in, and we just wanted to go out there and display it for the world to see. And obviously, extremely happy with the way we did it. I didn't think we proved any of those guys wrong, or that was our intention. We proved ourselves right. We know who we are as a team. We know all the work that we put in, and we just wanted to go out there and display it for the world to see. And obviously, extremely happy with the way we did it. I didn't think we.
Sorry, there we go. Well, there's first try doing audio and I botch it. But JJ McCarthy, after his third straight win over Ohio State, his second straight as a starter, Michigan 30, Ohio State 24. I know JJ believes that, and I'm sure the players do in the room, but I think he proved a lot of people wrong on Saturday, Mr. McCarthy. We will obviously talk about it. Michigan is 12-0, heading to Indianapolis. And narratives be damned, haters be sad, and copers be coping. Let's get into it. Josh Henschke, Intel Insider Publisher, Amazing Blue Review. Looking like Joe Pesci, Home Alone 2. But I believe we're getting a fired up Henschke tonight.
You're damn right you are.
Yeah, right.
I was right the whole time. Right the whole time. ABCs, always be coping.
That one, yes. We will be probably dropping a lot of those tonight. They won't all be good, but that's fine. They're not all winners.
I've got my prop here. I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for the right moment.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, they're not all winners, but that's all right. Well, except for Michigan, 12-0. Brock Heilig, also 12-0, all 12 games attended this year. Had one of the best views in the house. Michigan, Ohio State in that stadium. How you feeling?
Feeling good. It was a great view. Seeing the field, the fans rush the field after the game was very reminiscent of the 2021 win. I wasn't sure if the fans were going to do it just because this was the third one in a row instead of 2 years ago when it was the first one in 10 years. But they did. It was a great scene. As I was making my way from my seat in the press box to the press conference after the game, I saw a probably 9 or 10-year-old little Ohio State fan with his dad, and the little Ohio State kid, he had his Ohio State hoodie up like this, and he had his hands in his pocket, and he's just kind of walking with his head down, all dejected, and the dad's got his hand on his shoulder, and he's rubbing it like, it's going to be all right, buddy. And I think that was – yeah. that was pretty symbolic of how the day went for Ohio State fans. They never led, and Michigan got the third win in a row.
Screw them kids. That's how
Michael Jordan and Josh Henschke say "F them kids."
Yeah, exactly. You gotta learn. You gotta learn.
If we were wondering,
don't learn today. And Jerome Moore made sure.
If we were wondering which version of Fired Up Josh we were going to get, there you go.
You're gonna go. These kids are gonna go cry to their Eggo waffles on Monday morning because they can't cope.
Hey, waffles are good.
Well, there's gonna be tears in it. A little syrup.
Syrup and tears.
Because once again, Ryan Day disappoints the entire state of Ohio.
Well, you weren't kidding. Oh my God, this is gonna be fun. All right.
Soft.
I am gonna be outlines gone.
To quote the late great Dennis Green, they are who we thought they were, and there was no letting that dude off the hook. Ryan Day is baby poop soft. Charmin, the softness you can see, his stupid little dancing before the game, his little whistle bouncing in between the players. It's all fake. It's all orchestrated to look like he's a hard ass. But all you got to do is just look at him, and it's just a guy. It's hilarious. I'm just waiting for the goalposts to move after this one because, we're waiting on the next excuse to come out. Michigan, they don't have Harbaugh in this one. Imagine getting your ass beat by an assistant coach. By the way, who has more top 10 wins than James Franklin now, official. Just imagine. It couldn't be me. It couldn't be me. Sherrone Moore made Ryan Day his female dog of the weekend. So there you go. There you go.
You good?
I'm good for now.
Okay.
I'm good for now.
That's just part one.
Yeah, let me just sneak in.
Part one.
I took part in some of the tailgating festivities around the stadium before the game, before I headed over to my buddy's house where I was working. And I talked to a lot of fans, obviously, Brock, and I was trying to figure out, hey, you guys storming the field? You storming the field? And the consensus right away was yes. I was fortunate to be in the stands for 21, did get on the field, just an incredible experience. And a lot of people didn't, and I think they regretted it. So there was kind of a feeling of, I didn't last time, so I'm going to this time for sure. But also, too, the mood of the entire day was, this wasn't about just this one game, right? Ohio State, through what they were saying and what they were saying, weren't saying, you know, Ryan Day and whatever he was doing in this involvement with this entire scandal and what was being said on Big Ten conference calls and everything like that, what media members have been saying, what rival fans and players have been saying. They've been trying to take everything from Michigan in the past 2 years, right? Invalidating all of it. And what Michigan did, I can tell you right now, it's been real quiet, right? I don't know if you guys have noticed that. It's been real quiet today. It's kind of a footnote now on the bottom of a lot of articles because they go out and they beat Penn State on the road with Sherrone Moore as their head coach with no Jim Harbaugh, right? They win the tough game at Maryland. And then they win this game. No Connor Stallions, no sign stealing, no Jim Harbaugh. And like Josh said, no more excuses. And that's the word for me. I think validated. Chris Jenkins after the game was talking to Jason Avant and was just fired up. And you could hear that in his voice and what he was saying, that this was, and that's why I wanted to play the JJ clip about, we didn't have to prove anybody wrong. We were proving ourselves right. They've always believed in themselves. They knew it was all BS, but they proved a lot of people wrong that were really hoping they were going to lose and they could pin this on them. And now they're back to, well, you're going to vacate it anyway, right? That's the new narrative. But they did it, man. 3 straight wins. That was a great game. That's going to be an all-time classic. Yeah. I feel like Michigan fans have been saying more positive things about Kyle McCord than his own fans have been saying. The game largely went how I expected in a lot of ways. You know, it was about pressure getting on McCord. They were able to run the ball with Henderson, but not sustain it, right? Defensive struggle, blah, blah, blah. But I thought McCord played really well after the Will Johnson interception. Then obviously at the end, you're desperate, whatever. But Ohio State fans, you said it, it's excuses. And that starts, I'm not even going to blame the fans. That starts with Ryan Day. Because when we heard about the weather and possibly the flu going around in 21, didn't shoot it down. In 22, it's just a few big plays, right? And then even later this year, he said, oh, it was just one bad half about the previous game too, right? When your head coach is saying these things and supporting these excuses, they trickle down. And then in this game, of course, he's not going to shoot down the sign stealing thing because he's pushing all of this. But when somebody asked him about it, he should have said, no, it has nothing to do with it. They play tougher than us. We need to be tougher than them, right? It's that mentality. And like Josh said, it all just feels fake to me. I don't think he buys into this rival and really understands it like Urban Meyer did. Urban was a home run in that aspect. He's a great coach and somebody who really understood the Ohio State rivalry. It just feels like Day's faking at this point and doesn't know what else to do. So anyway, let's talk about the game, Josh. Again, it was a really good football game. It's going to be an all-timer. It was like we said, like what we thought. JJ did enough to win, right? 16 of 20. Blake Corum had a Blake Corum game. We saw the tight ends make plays. We saw the receivers make plays. And again, the defense, just an unbelievable performance by them, stepping up when they needed to. How many times have we said the number 30 in the last 2 years, by the way? You score 30, you hold your opponent under 30. That's the number. It gets a 30. And sure enough, here we are, 30-24. Yeah,
I was surprised they even got that high, to be honest. But, you know, I mean, that was a good, really good defensive battle both ways. You know, I think we talk about it all year. You know, you bend and don't break, and they did that a couple of times. And right at the end, you know, they bent a little bit, but when it counted, you know, Jalen Harrell's in your face and sealing the interception. So again, as we've said all year. It doesn't matter what you've done the last 11 weeks. None of it matters. What matters is what you do against Ohio State. And I think JJ really kind of he really it was a reclamation project, so to speak. I mean, he really this was his best game he's had in a couple of weeks, and that's the best time to have it. Blake Corum, his best, he had to be on his best, and he was for the most part. Donovan getting involved, Alex Orji getting involved, and James Turner doing what he had to do and taking care of business. I mean, that you can say all you want about the early season struggles and whether you had trust in him heading into this game. None of that matters now because the hometown kid went 3 for 3 on field goals in the game, and that's all that matters. And that's everyone's going to remember you by. Just like everyone's going to remember. Oh, hold on. Chucky, how old are you? 5? What are you part of the Rugrats here? What a stupid name, first of all, Chucky. You're either Charles or you're Chuck. Pick one. You can't be Chucky because your balls dropped, right? I mean, probably not because you're commenting on a chat room with ridiculous accusations here. Michigan is a bunch of cheaters. You know what? Shove it up your ass, Chucky. How about that? Shove it right up your ass and get out of here because you with your stupid name. What are you, 5?
I got it.
Get out of here.
I love that he literally came in and said the exact thing.
Cry more, Chuck. Cry more. Your tears are giving me fuel. I'm it's like Cartman in South Park where he's licking that ginger kid's tears. This is me.
Scott Tannenbaum, I love your tears, Scotty.
Just soaking up the tears. Shove it, Chucky. Get a new name. It's stupid.
He also
anyway,
spelled wrong.
You know what? This is. You know what? You know what this is? Anyone? You know what this is? This is Ohio State's program. This isn't Cottonelle, or excuse me, this isn't Charmin. This is Cottonelle. This is the best thing I get. This is the best thing I had at home. This is the Ohio State program. Charmin toilet paper soft. You can do a lot of things with it. You can blow your nose with it. You can wipe your ass with it. It's just there's so many things here that represent the Ohio State program. It's soft. It's weak. It's brittle if you get the wrong type.
Yeah.
Your finger might slip through while you.
I don't matter how hard you're struggling. You got to spend good money on toilet paper.
Right. And no matter how hard Ryan Day tries to spend money on his roster, he knows deep down he's never going to be good enough than the rugged Cottonelle toilet paper.
All right.
It's TP soft. This is look at just it's Ryan Day soft. Thank you very much.
All right, part 2.
Is Ryan Day just one ply? It's the one ply stuff that's like you see at you go to I don't know, a hardware store or like a Meijer or something, and you have to
the gas station bathroom
dump, and it's like real thin brittle stuff, so you have to kind of wrap it around your wrist about 8 times. That is like the one ply. That's the one ply sandpaper type of consistency of that they are that'll just brittle and break, so you're guaranteed to get a mess on your hands. And that's what the Ohio State program is right now. You got a mess on your hands. You got to wipe it up. You got to clean it up. And Ryan Day can't clean it up for you because he's going to go play in it. Thank you.
So Brock, good God, Franklin. Okay, there we go.
I don't know how we're back. I don't know.
I think we were literally clicking that at the same time.
Probably.
Okay. Let me try and get somewhere here. Brock, you probably have thoughts in your head. So go ahead and give your thoughts, and then we'll see where we get to next.
I'll just say and Trevor, you kind of alluded to it earlier. Listen, this game was huge. It was being talked up as one of the biggest games in rivalry history, college football history. Everything was building up to this game, number 2 versus number 3, just like it was last year. This one was even bigger than last year because Ohio State still backed their way in. Yeah, exactly.
I didn't mention that either. The softness permeates through the entire coaching staff. You've got a defensive back coach trying to comment on some random Michigan fan page Instagram account, trying to contact Roman Wilson because he got mad and butthurt. It's softness you can see, and it doesn't take very hard to see. You don't have to look very hard. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Anyway,
Brock just goes, anyway.
as big of a game as that was just on the football field, Trevor, like you mentioned, it's almost just as big in the sense that it validates everything that Michigan has done the last 3 years. And I think you could see that at the end of the game when Jesse Minter was waving goodbye to Ohio State as they were making their way back up the tunnel. I bet he took it personally. I bet he thought
they've been
like all these allegations.
Yeah.
Right. Like Jesse Minter's really not that good of a defensive coordinator. He only benefits from the signs that were illegally obtained. Right. That's probably what that is what people were talking about going in. And that's probably what Minter was trying to prove everyone wrong by on Saturday. And that's what he did. He had another terrific game plan. And Marvin Harrison Jr. said it after the game. He said he hadn't seen coverage like that from any team all year. Michigan did a really good job. Harrison still went over 100 yards, but like we've seen 3 years now, it was empty yards from Ohio State's wide receivers. Harrison had the one big play where Will Johnson got beaten and had the PI, and Harrison had a few other catches. One of the catches he had was for 20 or 25 yards on the last drive of the game, and they were trying to force feed him on that last drive. But this just validates everything for Michigan. And what a shock that when the NCAA says that it provides that the illegal obtaining of signs provides no or little to no competitive advantage, it turns out that it actually provides little to no competitive advantage. Like, wow, what a shocker. It's not like Michigan was out here cheating in ways that were changing the games in any way. And I think that's what everyone learned on Saturday. That's my biggest takeaway.
I want to go back to what Brock said real quick about what Marvin Harrison said after the game. I don't think that is more of praise of Jesse Minter than an indictment of the rest of the teams in the Big Ten. I mean, how do you not double team and bracket Marvin Harrison all game long? That's just an indictment of a bunch of dummies that are defensive coordinators out here. I mean, that should be like one underlined and like highlighted 8,000 times. I think that's crazy. That's crazy to me that like he's entering a game where really he's going to see that same type of coverage on Sundays. I mean, this isn't some like foreign thing that Michigan is throwing out there. I mean, that's just basic coverage, and that's more of an indictment of the rest of the teams in the conference than really. I mean, yeah, and you give Minter his due as well, but I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, how do you not do that? I don't know. I don't get it personally. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to really get into the weeds of it, which Toski and I will on cut-ups this week, I'm sure. They did some interesting things with cover zero looks where Rod Moore and the way that Michigan has been using safeties all year, they were completely different in this game. And that first interception, in fact, with Will, the reason he was able to jump the route the way he did is because he knew if Harrison cut up, Rod Moore was already coming. And then Marvin just let him. And same thing with the second interception with Rod Moore. He kind of holds up there too a little bit, but I do want to get into that because I've seen another comment too about the fact that this video is called Michigan Smashes the Buckeyes and, talking about them not being soft or whatever. the reason I use smash is because that's a word that's been around the Michigan program for a few years now, especially with the offensive line, right? We hear them talk about smash all the time. Roman Wilson, after the game, was asked if he thought the team was more physical or not, and he went on one of the best little rants I've ever heard. But he was right, though, right? He was saying they're not any more physical, right? Again, we're talking about talk versus reality. And for the Ohio State DB coach to then come out and call out Roman Wilson and be like, oh, you didn't even do anything. And then we've seen a lot of fans like, oh, this guy's only got 40 yards and we're going to listen to him. You're proving his point. You're stat chasing. You're star chasing. You're making excuses. It's about physicality. 22 straight games now. The team that ran the ball more or got more rushing yards has won this game. The one person on the other side of the ball that I think actually understands that is Ryan Day.
Right.
Ohio State fans have been frustrated all year at what they've been doing with their offense and this insistence to continually run the ball when they're like, why don't you throw it more? Why aren't you throwing it more? Because he knew to win this game, they'd have to be able to sustain the run. And in the third quarter, they had a very Michigan drive, right? A long sustained drive that had 8 straight runs. And not on the outside, right? Henderson gets 78% of his yardage on outside runs that are 15 yards or more. They ran it up the middle, right at Michigan's strength, and tied the game with that touchdown. And I remember at that moment thinking, "Ooh, this is how Michigan has won the last 2 games. He gets it. They're doing it." And Michigan comes back, and we have just a horrific injury to Zach Zinter. And you want to talk about the mentality of this entire team, of being there for their brother. I believe that was the exact terminology Corum used, Brock. I'll ask you about that in a moment. But just next man up, team mentality, all of that, overcoming adversity, everything that's been built in this culture for the last 3 years. Trevor Keegan, they show him on the sideline. I wrote an article about him today. He played literally the best game of his life, played out of his mind today, came back for unfinished business, said if we don't win this game, the season doesn't mean anything. And he showed up, and you could see the emotion on his face when Zinter went down. And on the very next play, he makes a big man block, not a little block, a big block, and opens up the hole for Blake Corum. Corum gets in the end zone, throws up the 6-5, and momentum is completely swung back to Michigan. Comes back, they have the ball. Michigan gets a 3-and-out. The second down play, Quentin Johnson does his version of Marcus Ray and knocks Ibuka down. The crowd is going nuts. McCord throws a soft, short pass, not even close on the third down marker. And everything Ohio State had earned trying to be the physical team on the drive before was gone. And that's why they have lost these 3 games. It's not the weather. It's not the flu. It's not 5 big plays. It's not a couple big plays. It's not the refs. It's Michigan being more physical. The Quentin Johnson hit, Harrell getting to the quarterback, etc. So keep talking about Roman Wilson's stats. You're proving his point. That's just my opinion on that part of it. But that's why I titled it Smash His Buckeyes, because a Buckeye's a nut. I thought it was a funny pun. I put the nutcracker in the logo in case you didn't see that. But anyway.
Well, and Roman Wilson can say whatever he wants because he's a senior and he's not coming back next year. So he doesn't have to deal with the backlash of what he says in the press conference. Yeah. So he doesn't have to back up anything. So it's, good for him. Good for him.
Tell him. Go ahead. Go ahead, Brock.
If I could just add something to that Zinter point, Trevor, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that Michigan doesn't win that game if Zinter doesn't go down. I mean, that was a ginormous momentum shifter. And if that's what it took for Michigan to win the game, then so be it. But like you mentioned, Trevor, Ohio State gashed Michigan on that on their opening drive of the third quarter. They gashed them. I mean, you're sitting there watching and you would have thought the jerseys were flipped. You would have thought it was Michigan and Ohio State's jerseys gashing Ohio State's defense. It was unbelievable, and it sucked the entire life out of the stadium. And all of a sudden, you're sitting there. My concern level at that point was 10 out of 10. It was like I'm looking at the clock, and there's 10 minutes left in the third quarter, and the Michigan defense is already getting tired. Like it didn't look good, and all of a sudden, like you mentioned, Zinter gets hurt, and Keegan makes the great block. Corum cuts it back and scores, and all of a sudden, the crowd comes back to life. They were chanting "Let's go, Zach!" right before that, and in a weird way, it energized the crowd. And I wrote about it after the game yesterday. It was a strange momentum shifter, but it almost seemed necessary in order for Michigan to win the game.
Josh, I don't remember if you texted me this or we talked about it on the Bleacher Report podcast, but I'm thinking about the Cade McNamara quote again after Penn State, that this isn't a game Michigan would have won in the past. I'm with Brock. Whether it was that touchdown or when Zinter went down, I've watched enough Michigan football games in my life that like I knew that feeling I had, and it was that, okay, this is going to go away from Michigan. And this was just another one of those games where it's like, man, if you want more proof that this program has changed, it's a trajectory for good, this isn't a game they would have won a few years ago.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I've seen enough Ohio State versus Michigan games to know like that was a very Urban Meyer type of drive where they just gashed you. And that would be the moment where you circle back and say, oh, hey, J.K. Dobbins just gashed Michigan for how many yards? I mean, yeah, Travion Henderson did the same thing. I mean, if Michigan were to lose that game yesterday, you could point to that moment and say that's when everything changed. But I mean, this team just doesn't flinch, just doesn't get rattled. I mean, I don't know what else needs to be thrown at this team to prove to people like that who worry about, what comes next, to not be scared or not be worried if something were to happen. Like, I don't know, like, Harbaugh getting suspended for 3 games or whatever. People are freaking out going, oh, hey, what's going to happen under Sharon Moore? Oh no, JJ had his worst 3 games under Sharon Moore. And then the 4th one is what matters. So I don't know what Michigan has to do anymore to prove that, nothing's going to phase them. I mean, if they were to lose any games coming up, is that they would be thoroughly beaten, not that because they caved or, caved under pressure or the moment was too big. Even the TCU game last year, I think that was a direct result of just uncharacteristic mistakes. And, even that team against TCU to now looks like a night and day different team, but with the same guys basically. So, and I don't think we're giving Trente Jones enough love too.
I was going to, but yeah.
I think, when you talk about Trevor Keegan having the game of his life, I mean, you're talking about Trente Jones, arguably playing even better than Keegan played. I mean, that dude was just mauling people. He was just ripping faces off that entire time he was there. So I really think he's kind of cemented himself the rest of the way here in the starting lineup in Zinter's absence. So, and who knows, maybe bumping Barnhart to the left really kind of will kickstart him and get him back on track. So, yeah, I mean, again, for people that were worried about, how these offensive line pieces were going to fit and what happens next with all these transfers that you took in the offseason, this is exactly why you do it. I mean, yeah, the transfers aren't necessarily plug and play with, with Zinter going down. I mean, these are guys that Michigan had on their roster, but, you've got the luxury of having a Ladarius Henderson at left tackle, and all that kind of stuff. So having depth on the offensive line is huge. And you just never know when moments I'm sorry, I'm just distracted by Brock's freeze there. That was just really funny.
I had
a really funny face. But he's good now.
I still see the frozen face.
And it's gone. Oh man, looks like Brock's got that Ryan Day internet.
There it is.
That's a bummer.
Oh,
no one goes, and you never go.
Shows up most of the time, but not in the big moments.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. You never go full James Franklin, and he did that multiple times during the game. But yes, Trente Jones, luxury of having multiple offensive linemen, starter caliber offensive linemen. Kudos to that kid. He's waited for his moment, and here he is. So that's good for him.
Barnhart is a natural run blocking guard. I think you could argue Ladarius Henderson is as well. Obviously, with Keegan and Zinter returning, those guard spots are locked down. Trent Jones was the starting right tackle at the beginning of last season before he got injured, and Barnhart took over the job. And then obviously Barnhart finished the year and then came into spring and worked as the starting left tackle because Henderson wasn't in, and that kind of gave him an advantage. And, you know, they really liked Jones in the role that he was in as a depth piece, and then obviously as the sixth offensive lineman, but he's looked good all year. And when he came in, because I was interested to see what they were going to do when Zinter went down, because in the mop-up duty for the last, you know, since Nebraska, we've seen Jeffrey Percy come in at right guard, who used to be a left tackle. So they've been kind of working him into a different position, if you will. But anyway, Barnhart's been fine this year. Nobody's shedding out. I hate this so much. All right.
No, he's not saying you are, but a lot of the fan base has.
Yeah.
And I hate that too. I mean, it's like, I think he's been fine. I mean, has the offensive line been up to,
and that's
year?
Where I was getting. Our expectations are literally the best offensive line in college football. And this year, they're probably second or third best offensive line in college football, right? Like, whoops, right? But yeah, Jones came in. They all stepped up when Zinter went down. You could tell, you know, we know Sharon Moore was on the sideline saying everything we do from here on out is for Zach and for Zinter, and you just saw that fire up coming to the team. But yeah, I said Keegan played the game of his life because he graded out as the best pass blocking and run blocking offensive lineman. He allowed no pressures. Just an impressive performance from him. And Barnhart was the second highest rated pass blocker. So he did have a good game. He did allow one pressure. Trent Jones, no pressures. Drake Nugent was mauling in the run game. And I mean, it was just a really good showing from the offensive line when they needed it. And the edge players got in a little bit early on. And I know Ohio State has really good depth players, right? But unlike Michigan, they don't have 5 guys. They've got 3 really, really solid guys. And I think towards the end of the game, what we expected, Michigan had the conditioning and the endurance to run that last drive, you know, taking 7 minutes off the clock. Obviously, you would have loved to get that last first down and just end it there and not have Ohio State get the ball back at all. But Michigan's strategy all year has been to rotate and build depth and build talent and have these guys fresh and ready for this big game and healthy. And it paid off because you lose your best offensive lineman, you lose your best corner in Will Johnson, and you're able to make it work. So, and we saw too, you brought up Alex Orji. We saw a couple trick plays, right? We saw the Donovan Edwards pass. We saw Orji. We saw some tendency breaks as well. This was just, it's so weird because it's different than the other 3 games or the other 2 games. Like all 3 games are different, but they also feel like Michigan won in the same way too, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about this all year, and it's like, you know, all of these games leading up to Ohio State was to prepare for Ohio State. You know, the times JJ came out in the third quarter, or the entire second team offense came out, or the second team defense, third team defense coming out. This was to prepare yourself for Ohio State, or to prepare yourself in case worst case happens, like Zach Zinter, and you kind of have to shuffle a little bit and readjust. So everything Michigan does is a chess piece in terms of how the game is going to play out against Ohio State and what they did on Saturday. And the fact that they had so many guys have so much experience that they could trot out there, like a Jaden McBurrows who played like 20 something snaps.
Yeah, he took over in the slot, so Sanders still could move outside and cover cover Marvin. Excuse me.
Yes, this is what you prepare for. You know, this is why the coaching staff wants you to be ready, because you never know when you need to be ready, and this is why, you know, they rested these guys so much, is to prepare for this game, and they came in healthy for the most part, left, you know, healthy for the most part, except for a couple of guys. And I'm not super worried about Will Johnson. I think he'll be, you know, ready for the playoff. I'm not sure if he'll play on on Saturday or not yet. And frankly, I don't think they need
I was gonna
him.
say I wouldn't play him even if he could. To be
Right,
honest.
exactly. Yeah, I'm the same way. But there's no long-term fear there. But yeah, I mean, this is what you prepare for. You prepare for games like this, and this is a result. You're playing for your third consecutive Big Ten championship. You're playing for a college football playoff, and now, Michigan is playing for more than just to be there. They're preparing to be a national title contender. They want to win a national title, and obviously they got to win a semifinal first. But everything they've done through this entire year has led up to these next few weeks and month or so.
Are we here, Brock? Are you there?
Yeah, sorry, fellas. I think so. I went through a couple minute stretch there where my Wi-Fi kind of lagged out. But I guess I'll add a little bit, just going back to the game in general. I think, honestly, this obviously losing Zinter's a huge hit, right? And that's not what you want from your senior captain or anything like that. But I think this is why Michigan has, or this is the situation that Michigan is prepared for in terms of the offensive line, of building depth and getting so many guys that they trust, where they can just have no problem in moving Carson Barnhart from right tackle to guard, and then throwing Trente Jones in there and really seeing little to no drop off. In fact, the offensive line and the run game was arguably better after Zinter's injury than it was before. And so going forward, I don't see any way in which this will really affect Michigan in any huge way. Another thing I want to add about the game, and I don't know if maybe you guys touched on this while I was tending to my Wi-Fi issue, but the Roman Wilson touchdown, I want to talk about this for a little bit, because if I see one more, mainly it's Ohio State fans, but if I see one more fan or person try to argue that that's an interception or
moronic,
a fumble or anything like that, I'm going to lose my mind. Like, these people don't understand basic football. Like,
well, they're the same ones that claim that Michigan's cheating and scouting has a
no one else steals signs.
a three touchdown advantage. I mean, it's all smooth brained.
Yeah, they're in the end zone. So if he has the possession, it's over when he breaks the plane. So at worst, it's high between the receiver and the defender, and that goes to Roman Wilson. So yeah, Klatt didn't help either with his.
Klatt was horrible.
I was really surprised on
He was trying way too hard to be like this Mr. Call it down the middle, because people have been saying he's been too much of a Michigan fanboy and all that stuff. He was awful on Saturday. And I'm a Klatt fan. Like, he's one of my favorite analysts. He was awful. Dog water. It was terrible. He was just terrible. Anyway, sorry, Brock. Go ahead.
That's all right. You guys basically said exactly what I was thinking. He caught the ball at the 5-yard line. The millisecond that the front of the ball touches that white line, the play's over and it's a touchdown. Anything that happens after that in the end zone is irrelevant, because the play's over once Roman Wilson has control of the ball and crosses the plane. The play's over. And so the fact that Denzel Burke ended up with the ball means nothing.
Right.
And that's just something that's really triggered me the past 24 hours, looking through social media and things. Like, they're just looking for any possible reason to continue to hate on Michigan and not validate these wins. It's unbelievable. Yeah, Rod
this
Moore,
is also my favorite.
That's another one too. Yeah,
Toski the GOAT chiming in. Yeah, they're saying Rod Moore didn't catch the interception when they're showing a picture of his elbow.
Right.
Like, that's not the football. And then I even saw I'll call it reputable, but like a pretty popular Ohio State account that I kind of respect, say, like, yeah, I don't know why they didn't review it. What were you watching? They reviewed it way longer than they
showed the front view of it, and he cupped it under his arm.
The refs literally reviewed it. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It was interesting. Fans in the stadium that I talked to after the game had this perspective, like, oh, they were screwing us at OSU, got every call. And I will say, watching it, I felt like the reviews were like, I don't know the one that I thought was really wrong per se. The Fleming one was interesting to me. And I wonder if it wasn't for the Roman Wilson play, if they would have ruled Fleming incomplete. Like, oh, he took multiple steps. I'm like, well, yeah, kind of. He shuffled his feet a little bit. There wasn't really long. I don't know. If Michigan would have recovered that ball, I wonder if they make that same ruling, knowing that ends the game.
Yeah,
would they have ruled that was a catch and a fumble, right? So I don't know.
And the Blake Corum touchdown too. It was the drive. Will Johnson had the interception, and Corum had the 3rd and 1 run from the 1 yard line, and I thought he pretty clearly got in. That review didn't go Ohio State's way, or I guess it did go Ohio State's way. Didn't go Michigan's way, but it didn't matter because Corum scored on the next play. But this perception that the refs were just out to get Ohio State is wild to me.
Yeah, and we talked about this earlier too. I don't remember the full context of it, but just about how Michigan plays. And they only had 3 penalties in this game. They're the least penalized team in college football. No turnovers, right? In the past, it was, I think we talked about this when reviewing what I thought went wrong for Ohio State in 21 and 22. In the past, Michigan had dumb penalties, right? Or dropped interceptions that would have stopped Ohio State drives, or fumbles in the red zone, or whatever, right? They were the ones shooting themselves in the foot. And it's the other way now, right? Ohio State last year, it's just a few big plays. Well, yeah, ignore your own botched fake punt. Ignore your own unnecessary roughness with the guy headbutting somebody on the sideline, right? And that just continues to be the theme, which another guy, 60s guy, thanks for chiming in. I already explained this. Smashes, yes, because Ohio State is soft. They were out physicaled again. Smashes is a term Michigan uses.
And they're not.
Thanks for coming in, though. Appreciate you.
It's a nut.
Yeah, it's a little nut. They smashed the nut.
Cracker.
I didn't put Michigan smashes Ohio State. I put Michigan smashes.
Well, if you look
Buckeyes.
if you look at the cover photo, there's a nutcracker on there.
No,
I mean,
okay.
I think
God
they did
forbid.
crack their nuts.
God forbid you make a pun.
Right.
So, we talked about
Michigan's got Ryan Day's nuts in a nutcracker for sure.
we talked about the defensive side of the ball. I thought it was a pretty even performance across the board. Michigan got a little bit from everybody, but Mason Graham, no surprise, led the team in pressures with 4, had a sack, a couple QB hits, just an absolute menace. If you want to see a position group on Michigan take a step up, have me say something negative about them in my stock report, because last week I talked about I'm not really worried about the secondary, maybe a little bit about the safeties, and Rod Moore just comes out and has his best game of the year, even before his interception. Played really well, a bunch of tackles, good in coverage. Mike Sainristil, what do I even need to say about Mike Sainristil at this point? His hit on Trevion Henderson, it was like in slow motion. I saw it coming.
Yeah.
Right. But textbook, man. No tart, loads of shoulders, right in the chest. Just beautiful. And again, back to smashes. Michigan just being the more physical team and pursuing that. I want to talk about Rod Moore, though, and something else that I think is really, really important when it comes to this rivalry and believing in it, truly understanding it, right? Not, you can cross out little M's and you can say that team up north and you can do all those gimmicks, but do you really believe in it, right? Jim Harbaugh has been a part of this rivalry since he was born. Urban Meyer, was it the same day or like close to the same day they were born in the same hospital or whatever? Again, Toledo, came up under Ohio State coaches, believes in this rivalry, understands it, right? And what Michigan has done in the last few years, what this team is built on, is Rod Moore, an Ohio native who didn't get an Ohio State offer, right? An underrated prospect that you've developed. J.J. McCarthy, an Ohio State fan growing up, who you was going to commit to Ohio State, but you wanted to get Kyle McCord because you were worried if you took JJ, you wouldn't get Marvin Harrison. So you play games and you lie to JJ and you take McCord to get Marvin Harrison instead of just being truthful, right? And now you've put a giant chip on JJ McCarthy's shoulder, Michigan man for life, and he's come in focused on nothing but beating you, right? Mm-hmm. And proving you wrong. And guess what? Michigan's got another quarterback committed in the 2024 class named Jaden Davis, who was going to commit to Ohio State, and they didn't take it. They took Dylan Raiola. He ended up going to another program, right? Decommitted. And they circle back to Jaden like, hey, we're interested again, right? Doesn't work, right? So Harbaugh, in towards the end of 2021 is recruiting Darius Clemens a week or two before signing day. And he tells him and his father to his face, if the right NFL offer comes, I'm gone. Brutal honesty, potentially hurting recruiting class that'll be existing back if he comes back to Michigan, tells him the truth. 2022 was saying the exact opposite. That's a big reason Josh's intel was way above everyone else, that Jim wasn't leaving, whatever. Ryan Day is playing games with these recruits and creating grudges with these kids. Michigan and Ohio State recruit all the same dudes, right? And then whether it's going to be Jordan Marshall or another Ohio kid that you just don't offer and Michigan goes and gets, right? Like, this rivalry is 24/7, 365. It's on the field. It's off the field. It's recruiting. It's every comment you make in interviews. It's everything. And when Michigan started believing it in 2021 and put up the banner, what are you going to do to beat Ohio State today? And Aiden Hutchinson and Rod Moore and Jim Harbaugh obviously beat Ohio State or die trying. People made fun of them, but they believed it and they went out and backed up the talk. That's just where the rivalry sits for me. And I don't know where you go, right? You're going to keep recruiting 5-star receivers. Okay. Right. Corners, like whatever. This isn't a talent issue. It's just not. And Michigan, it's sad. This is the last version of this game we will ever have, right? Because moving forward, the Big Ten championship game, there's a potential they would rematch. The winner of that basically gets a bye. Another team still probably gets into the playoff. We could see a situation where they play 2 or 3 times in a year. Michigan could win the game, convincing fashion, but if Ohio State gets farther in the playoff, does anybody really care about the regular season game? Like, I do think the expanded playoff is good for college football for a lot of reasons, but we're going to lose days like Saturday. Like we just are. So we've been talking about the season being like the end of a trilogy, this 3-year era for Michigan. In a lot of ways, it's the end of this trilogy and this era for Ohio State, and Michigan kind of put a bow on it. Moving forward, the game will still matter, obviously, but I wonder, in this context that I'm talking about, Josh, where I feel like Ohio State doesn't understand anymore when they used to. It was the opposite way before, right? They don't understand that anymore. If we're now moving to an era of college football where the game naturally means less just because of how it affects the playoff, I don't know where Ohio State catches Michigan. I mean, obviously, Michigan could lose a bunch of players this year, and that's a factor. But right now, it just feels like when I saw Ryan Day walking up the tunnel after that game with his head down, he looked defeated, not just in the game, but like hopeless. Yeah. I didn't have to go against Jim Harbaugh. They've had all this adversity and everything we've thrown at them at the public. Yeah. And I saw somebody commented earlier too, in a lot of ways, Ohio State, this was for all 3 games. Because if Ohio State would have won this game, they would have said 21 and 22 no longer count. We proved it. You only won because of Stallions. You took everything from them. Yep.
No, I mean, you essentially just trotted Day out the midfield and just pantsed him. Not just like a pants him with you pantsed him with the underwear and went down to his knees. I mean, in front of 110,000 people. I mean, that's essentially what you did. So, he's, I mean, that looked like someone that was just physically and mentally defeated. I got nothing. I mean, they changed philosophies on both sides of the ball, not just one, both sides of the ball. And while it was successful for the most part, it didn't do what you intended it to do, and that was beat Michigan. This is why you changed what they changed. They tried switching defenses with Jim Knowles. That's 2 losses in a row with Jim Knowles. They tried to be more physical in the run game. You still lost. So now, Ryan Day's heading into the locker room thinking, what can I do? There's nothing I can do. I've tried everything. And, it's credit to Michigan for having the answers too. I mean, you can make the argument, well, Ohio State's recruiting at a better clip. Well, none of that stuff matters if you aren't developing players. I mean, if you're just keeping them treading water until they go off to the NFL, that's fine. That'll win you, 10 or so games. But when it comes to this rivalry, it's way more than just showing up. I mean, it's way more than that. And that's kind of what the argument you could say about Michigan the past couple of years too, even with the Don Brown years. They kind of just showed up, maybe a little overconfident, and then they got, the floor clean with them by Ohio State. So
that's what I'm saying. They believed these narratives.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
to your point about the defense was improved,
Yep.
right? They didn't give up the big plays they did the previous year, but that's not why you lost, right? They believed that was the reason they lost. Maybe that's why you lost 45-23.
Right.
Right. But it's not why you lost the game. Right. And we saw it on that last drive in the fourth quarter. They still weren't physical enough to stop Michigan when they needed to. Right. So
you can't change a culture that you don't believe in. You can't change a culture into something else if you don't believe in the original culture to begin with. I mean, Ryan Day was handed a golden Lamborghini, a golden plated, priceless Lamborghini on a platter, and he proceeds to just trip and fumble and just everywhere. Yeah, he made the college football playoff. Yeah, they won a game, but none of it matters when, you look at CJ Stroud, arguably one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Oh, by the way, he's hasn't won against Michigan. Oh, now Marvin Harrison Jr., arguably a top 3 pick, will do very, very well in the NFL. Hasn't beaten Michigan. It's fine and dandy to pump these guys into the league, but if you can't believe in your own culture, or if you don't even have a culture to stand on, because I don't even know what Ryan Day's culture is at Ohio State. I mean, yeah, winning is part of it, but not winning the big one. Right. You have to believe in something, in this constant work of trying to get this to work and trying to fit this square peg into a round hole and just trying to jam it in there. It's not going to work. And it just feels fake. It just feels fake. It feels forced. You're trying too hard, and you're seeing the results of it on the field. I mean, Ryan Day has done almost everything he can do to try to fix this. Offense scheme, defense scheme, bringing in players in the portal to, fit this new style of play. And it just hasn't worked. I don't know. I mean, this has kind of felt like, this feels a lot like what Jim Harbaugh was when we're at the crossing point here in 2020. We didn't really know what Jim Harbaugh's program was, and he found a way to fix it. And, I don't think Michigan strayed too far away, or Jim Harbaugh didn't stray too far away from who he was or what Michigan was. And I feel like, Ryan Day is just kind of just lost his way. It's kind of lost the Ohio State way. And I don't know if he'll ever get it back. I mean, the fuse is getting awfully short, now you've lost 3 in a row. I mean, even a fourth, I don't know what would happen after a fourth, but something's got to change. And I don't know what. I mean, they've already tried and it's failed. Do you go back to the drawing board? I guess, but just because you got players doesn't mean that you're destined to, win everything and just show up and win. You got to have a culture. You got to have something to lean back on. And I'm not sure what Day can lean back on in times like this.
I almost wonder if Ohio State's at that point that Michigan was at. Josh, I know you touched on the Don Brown era. I wonder if Ohio State's at the point where Michigan was at in like 2017, 18, and 19, where they had lost 6, 7, 8 in a row to Ohio State. And they, in my opinion, they were showing up to the game mentally defeated. It's almost like they knew they were going to lose the game before they stepped on the field, just because that streak was getting so long, 6, 7, 8 years in a row of just losing. I almost wonder if Ohio State's getting to that point now where, yeah, the streak's not as long as it was when Ohio State was beating Michigan for more than 5 years in a row at a time, but it's 3 years now. And I mean, Ohio State, they put up a good fight yesterday, but you got to wonder if Ryan Day at this point is kind of just accepting the fact that Michigan's a better program, and he's almost like you guys mentioned, with the head down, walking up the tunnel. I wonder if he's kind of come to that realization, like, there's just nothing I can do at this point.
The rivalry, sorry, Trevor. The rivalry is not for everyone, and that's okay. You have to be a special kind of coach on both sides to live the rivalry every second of the day, every waking moment. If you're the head coach of Ohio State or Michigan, you're living this every day. You hear about it every day. And, for some people, it's just they can't handle it. And that's fine. And that's not to degrade a person for handling stresses or whatever. Just some people aren't made for the rivalry, and that's all right. I mean, Brady Hoke inevitably wasn't made for the rivalry. Jim Harbaugh, during the first couple of years, was just getting out coached, and the rest of his staff, and he just didn't have the right pieces. There are ways to survive the ebbs and flows of a rivalry, but when you're kind of, when you're in this spot and you're trying to make these changes and nothing's happening, that's when you kind of feel like yourself sinking deeper and deeper. And that's when the pressure really gets to you. And as Trepa Coles mentioned here, Urban Meyer lived the rivalry. Yeah, that dude was obsessed. He, worked himself into fake sicknesses all the time. But, he was obsessed with this rivalry. I mean, he lived and breathed it. It takes a special kind of person to do that. And, Urban Meyer's a special kind of person. He's a scumbag, but he's a special kind of person.
A lot of the best people in sports are, because you got to be willing to bowl people over and do terrible things.
Right.
Michael Jordan was a jerk, and you know what I mean? That's just, but yeah.
You got to snake some people on your way to the top.
But to your point, that's why I was like, he's never going to Michigan State. You guys thinking that is absolutely insane to me. Do you know what his legacy in Columbus is worth? You think he's going to go to Michigan State, recruit against Ohio State, and try and beat them? His bar is called 7-0.
Yeah.
Come on. Right. So say a couple things in Ohio State. Then I want to put a bow on it and kind of get to the what's next. Brock, to your point, Michigan in 2016 was in that game earlier than anybody expected, right? Michigan's a top 5 team throughout the year. They come in, play a great game, and just barely come up short. And then 2017, there's a lot of roster turnover and injuries, and it's a rough year in 2017. And I've said for a long time, I thought it was one of the best games I've ever seen Harbaugh coach. The game plan for the 2017 game was unbelievable. Michigan was so outmatched in that game, and they were right in it until John O'Korn, threw it to absolutely nobody, right? And then 2018, I disagree. I don't think the problem was they didn't think they could win. I think they were too confident they were going to. They had their revenge tour. Everything was going their way. I mean, everybody was picking Michigan to win that game in 2018. Ohio State had just struggled the week before. Their offensive line hadn't looked as good, blah, blah, and then they got smacked. And that really derailed everything because somebody else had I think it was actually Toski said, when you don't have anybody on your team that's won in this rivalry, it's hard to convince them you can win in the rivalry when there's nobody there, right? And I think Michigan was in a really bad spot in 2019, and then obviously 2020's COVID, they don't even play. If it wasn't for the complete coaching staff overhaul, right, and bringing in these new people and Michigan people, right, who knew the rivalry, and Aiden Hutchinson, who's a legacy and knew the rivalry, and incredible leaders like Josh Ross and Cade McNamara and Hassan Haskins, it was kind of a perfect storm. They were able to win 21 and change the trajectory. Ohio State needs something like that. And again, they have tons of talent. And I don't mean this as shots at players at all, because another problem Michigan had in the first years under Harbaugh was not getting 5-star results out of 5-star players. Yep. Didn't mean they weren't 5-star players. You guys are probably going to know the name I'm going to say right now. Rashawn Gary is doing just great in the NFL, right? Doing just fine for himself. Massive second contract. Just had 3 sacks against the Lions. Number 1 consensus recruit. Every recruiting service, number 1, completely misused at Michigan to the point that his mom is on Twitter attacking people because they were so upset with the perception of him, right? That's where I feel like Ohio State is right now. CJ Stroud's comments about his current coach in Houston sound very interesting when you're thinking about the coach he just came from, right? His demeanor, his body language, great football player, played really well in college. He's not necessarily where I'm going to go with this. Julian Fleming was the top wide receiver across the board, right? He was rated above Marvin Harrison and Igbuka and these guys, right? JTT and Sawyer were supposed to be like having both Bosas at the same time, Chase Young, whatever combo, the next unbelievable edge duo, right? They had 6 pressures on Saturday. Not bad. You know who else had 6 pressures on Saturday? Jalen Harrell and Derek Moore, right? And Jalen Harrell, with the last pressure of the game, the QB hit that forced the interception, beat Donovan Jackson, the 7th ranked player in his class, the number 1 guard in the country in his class. Do you know how good of an interior offensive lineman you have to be top 10 overall in a recruiting class? Josh has been around recruiting for a long time, right? He knows better than me. Like, part of the reason Ohio State's classes are so high is because they go after QBs, wide receivers, running backs, guys that get high stars. That dude was a lock to be an unbelievable offensive lineman. He's played just as well as Keegan, right? So they're not maximizing the talent they have, and they're not. The culture thing's just not there.
Yep.
That's where it is. And again, I hate saying that because I feel like I'm taking shots at these guys. I want to come back and kind of echo something JJ said. That was a really good Ohio State football team.
Oh, no doubt. And it's not even against the players.
That's where I was going. I think there's a coaching, Kevin Wilson left, and the idea that he wasn't massive to the offense for these last however many years he's been there, and you could just promote Hartline because he's a great recruiter, and then Day will go back to being play caller, mostly kind of like, it's just, there's a weird element. And maybe Day wasn't given a fair shot with Urban hanging around the program the first year and like still kind of being de facto coach in the building and stuff. I don't know. I'm not around Ohio State, but
I think Kyle McCord should transfer, honestly. I mean, he doesn't deserve the crap he's getting.
Well, he's going to have to because Arch Manning is heading to Ohio State. Haven't you seen the news on all the Ohio State Twitter?
I mean, whatever. But, I think McCord should transfer because he doesn't deserve half the crap that he's getting. I mean, that was a coaching.
And I want to finish on that note because we've been homers in this, and I hope you understand why. We've had a rough few months. Okay, we've been homers. Michigan won, and I think I'm just so happy for that team and those players and all the hell they've been through, and it's great. But that being said, I kind of said it earlier. Ohio State played how I expected, but also exceeded my expectations. I thought McCord played really well, and it's absolute bullshit that his fans are going after him because they have to blame something.
Yeah, of course.
And they're going after him. I think that's crazy. Michigan's defense did a great job of not letting Travion Henderson get the big outside runs. I said he couldn't run up the middle. He did. Right? In similar situation. I don't know if he was put in all the best places to succeed, whatever. Marvin Harrison's a freak. I think he's an unbelievable receiver. I think he's going to be great. I'm glad. I know there's this weird chatter he might come back next year. That would be insane. You're a top 3 pick, bro. What are you doing? But if I don't have to watch Michigan play him again, I will be perfectly fine with that. Yeah. Defensively, Denzel Burke, he's getting a lot of crap because of comments he made during the week. I thought Denzel Burke had a hell of a football game. Played really, really well. The interior guys, Michael Hall, had a really good football game. I'm trying to remember the safety. Was it Proctor? They put Proctor in a crazy spot in that game, and he had some moments that weren't great, but the Corum touchdown, I think, comes to mind. No, the Corum touchdown wasn't him. That was Sonny Styles. And then Steele Chambers has gotten a lot of smack from his own fan base. He led the team in tackles, thought he played well. That's a really good football team with some really good players. And that wasn't, I know I've thrown some people off with the smashes Ohio State title. Obviously, that wasn't a beat down like we saw in the previous 2 years, but it just still kind of felt the same, like I said. But yeah, that's a really good football team. Mm-hmm. There's just something missing. And I don't know, I don't think firing Ryan Day is the answer. I mean, the guy's won 90% of his football games.
Yeah.
But in 2020, when people wanted Jim Harbaugh gone, it was less about Jim Harbaugh and more about something drastically had to change. And could Harbaugh be the guy to do it? Right? You've already set this precedent, right? By 2020, you're 6-7 years removed from the Super Bowl. Nobody gives a crap anymore. the kids you're recruiting were 9 years old, right? Ryan Day is going to get to the point where it's like, I even said that in this cycle, like with the corners and the defensive linemen, I was kind of laughing. Like you're talking about Marshawn Lattimore. It's been a long time since Marshawn Lattimore. You know what I mean? So eventually you're going to start selling a vision and not results because you're not going to have the results to lean on anymore. But anyway, Michigan beats Ohio State, 3-peat, heading to Indianapolis to take on Iowa. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. Yes.
Before we go, we got a
little bit more to talk about.
I just want to talk about how just unpleasant of an experience it is to watch a game on TV.
Oh, Fox.
It is awful. I mean, it is just the most unenjoyable, the most unenjoyable experience to watch it. I mean, just the fact that they had so many reviews in this game, which is ridiculous. And then you'd have one play commercial, timeout commercial. Oh, it really took the suspense out of the game, especially towards the end. It's just really unpleasant. And yeah, I think, as Mr.
Martini, just the suspense, it's the story.
Right.
Even Zinter's Zoe Holmstrom, photographer that I've mentioned before, I'm obsessed with, posted some pictures of Trevor Keegan and JTT hugging while Zach Zinter was injured.
Yeah.
Right. Ryan Day went and saw Zach Zinter's parents while Zinter was being pulled away. Both teams were like, there were a lot of really great moments in that terrible moment. And Fox wanted you to see an Allstate commercial.
Right.
Right. And like, even like just the in-between stuff that they talk about, it's gone. And it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible.
And that's also kind of the special thing about this rivalry too, is that it's built on hate, but it's also built on a mutual respect too. I mean, this rivalry is not toxic like Michigan State rivalry is. And you can tell, we talked about this, Trevor, yesterday on the Bleacher Report podcast. We talk about all these guys coming up to Zinter, as you mentioned, Keegan shaking hands with JTT and all that stuff, and Ryan Day meeting Zach Zinter's parents in the hallway and stuff. It's these, they're not bad people. It's like there's respect. And we also, we mentioned the fact that that famous photo of Devin Gardner on one knee with JT Barrett as well. There's a level of respect that goes into people that put on the winged helmet and, the Ohio State helmet. There is. It's not. It might be toxic amongst the fan base, probably just on Twitter, because that place is just a cesspool to begin with.
It's good to remember Twitter's not real life.
Right, exactly. So, when you compare the two rivalries, they're not even comparable, honestly, between Ohio State and Michigan State. Yeah. One is far more. One, you don't have guys beating the crap out of each other in a tunnel, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, yeah, it's stupid with the crossing out of M's and not saying Michigan and all that stuff. But if that's the worst thing that comes out of that rivalry, I think you're doing something right, honestly.
Yeah. Really well said. And even what we've done in this show is for fun. And I think people know that. I might upset some people here when I tell you this, but I saw JT Barrett before the game, and he came over to a tailgate and played flip cup with Michigan fans. And of course, everybody was joking. Like when he didn't land the cup, they're like, oh, just a little this close, bud. You're a little short, whatever. But I couldn't help myself. That guy, I hate the call that happened, but there was nothing that JT Barrett did to make me hate him. He was a hell of a football player that just happened to be at Ohio State. Mm-hmm. And I went up to him and I just said, hey, dude, just respect, man. Just pounded it, right? And we've seen Jake Butt and Josh Perry, I know they work together, but they've come together to raise money for a charity. They've used the rivalry in a good way. Charles Woodson and Urban Meyer obviously are able to joke with each other a little bit, which how good was that Woodson celebration with Urban Meyer in the background and stuff. But I've seen Michigan and Ohio State former players like, I don't want to do this analogy because it's overplaying what football is and minimizing war. Okay. But when you see soldiers who fought on opposite sides of a war able to come together and understand that we were both young men just thinking we were the good guys doing the same thing for our country. You just happen to be on the other side, right? This is just football at the end of the day. And sometimes who you root for or who you play for or whatever is just based on where you happen to be born, right? And there's this level of respect that exists in the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry. Like I said, I don't know if it's respect for the opponent as much as it is for respect for the rivalry itself, but it makes it the best rivalry in all sports. It's fantastic. And it just doesn't exist with Michigan State. It's just not there. And that's the part they don't understand. And I know it frustrates the hell out of them because Michigan is their biggest rivalry, but there's just something missing there. Sorry. But anyway.
This is Michigan State fans wiping up their tears because they're not good enough to be on the same level as the Michigan.
Well, and then when you do stuff like openly rooting for Ohio State and whatever, like showing your ass doing that stuff, man, like am I happy when Ohio, are Michigan fans happy when Ohio State loses a game? Yeah, but like you're not openly root. It's just weird energy. But anyway.
But yeah, at the end of the day, that's 3 wins in a row. Thank you very much. It's three straight dubs.
First time since 95 through 97. And if you're looking for trends that you hope continue, Michigan, of course, won the national championship in 1997. We're already at hour 10 minutes, so I don't want to go crazy long, but it seems crazy. They're playing Iowa, right, in the Big Ten championship game, which is, thank God, the last version of this where divisions are a factor because
just terrible.
Again, no offense to Iowa. We talked about this. You don't need to apologize for winning your football games, whatever, but it's just not a championship game in a lot of ways. Like nobody feels like whoever won Michigan, Ohio State was going to be the Big Ten champion, obviously. Right. It just feels ugh. And then, I mean, even the factor of what are they, 21.5 point favorites or something like that? I'm trying to remember. I'm looking real quick here. That is Maryland was 17.5. Minnesota was 19. Nebraska was 17.5. Like, so when I'm talking about this being a championship game and it's equitable to Nebraska, it's just hard for me to. And unfortunately, Cade McNamara and Eric All are both hurt. So we got robbed of that storyline. That actually would have been fantastic.
Yeah.
There's a chance this is Kirk Ferentz last game, which whatever you think about him, that's an all-timer coach right there. So that'll be interesting. But let's go ahead and assume for conversation's sake, Michigan beats Iowa and they're heading to the college football playoff. Brock, you follow the rankings and polls more than either of us combined, and Josh thinks they're useless anyway until the last one. So do you think, I know they made up some ground in the AP poll, 2 and got close to Georgia. 1, do you think there's a case for Michigan to be 1 ahead of Georgia now? They're the only team with 2 wins over teams currently ranked in the top 10. Right now, it's like, okay, we've been arguing for this resume where they've been destroying opponents all year. You're like, oh, we haven't played anybody. Well, now we also have the 2 best wins on the year. Plus we destroyed everyone else we played. Right. 1, do you think that case is made? And 2, I know that it's hard to guess who the playoff's going to be because there's a lot to shake out, but who do you think Michigan's best matchup might be in the semifinal?
I love this conversation. I could talk about scenarios and different.
Well, you've got 30 seconds. Go. No, I'm kidding.
Talk about this all night long, but I will start with number 1. I think there is a case for Michigan to be the number 1 seed as of right now. Do I think it'll happen? No. Michigan's resume might be better than Georgia's, but I do still feel like Georgia will stick at 1. But even if Michigan is number 1 on Tuesday, if Georgia beats Alabama, that's going to flip back to.
So they might just leave them at 1, so they don't have to do that.
Right.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
I think that's what they might do. Now, obviously, it'll change if Georgia loses to Alabama, and that's what I want to get into with the college football playoff. I predict Michigan will be at 2 on Tuesday. I won't make a prediction for the Georgia-Alabama game, but I will say this. It's my opinion that if Alabama beats Georgia, they're both in. Alabama for sure, and I don't think the committee can leave out Georgia after what they've done the last 2 years and being 12-0, 1 loss to Alabama in the SEC title game. I still feel like Georgia's in. And at that point, there's going to be one spot for a Florida State, a Pac-12 champ. It probably would be the Pac-12 champ.
Yeah.
Over Florida State. Now, here's where it gets interesting. I was thinking about this last night. We know the last few years, especially, the committee loves to avoid back-to-back rematches. They avoided the Michigan-Ohio State rematch last year, and there was another potential SEC rematch somewhere in the last couple of years in the first round of the playoff. They don't like to have, you know, Michigan-Ohio State play in the last week of the season, then have them play in the first round of the playoff, or Bama and Georgia play in the SEC title game. I think that's what it was in 2021. Bama and Georgia played in the SEC title game, and then they split them up. Bama played Cincinnati and Georgia played Michigan. So if you follow that same logic going into this year, Michigan is, if Georgia loses to Alabama, Michigan would be 1, but then you're stuck playing Georgia or Alabama at 4. It'd probably be Georgia. It would be Georgia. And I feel like that's a situation that doesn't bode well for Michigan at all. And so I think if you're a Michigan fan, you got to be pretty heavily rooting for Georgia to win. Even if it means Michigan doesn't get the 1 seed, you stay there at 2. You don't have to get a tough Georgia team in the first round. And then you roll the dice with the Pac-12 champ or Florida State. If it's me, I'm looking at Florida State. Florida State's probably the top team that I'd be most confident in Michigan beating, just because of their quarterback.
Yeah, such a bummer. Yeah,
it's tough. And right behind them is Washington. I feel like Michigan would beat Washington by multiple scores. Their defense isn't good. It might be good, but it's definitely not great. It's nowhere near great. And I feel like Minter would do a good job of containing Michael Penix in that offense. For me, it goes Florida State, Washington, probably Texas would be the team right behind them, and after that maybe, or I feel like Oregon, Bama, and Georgia are all kind of in that category where Michigan would have a real tough time. But I think we learned last year, right? Like, even if Michigan draws Florida State and you're feeling very confident,
TCU,
you can't. Yeah, there was no more. The level of confidence can't be any higher than it was last year. Michigan lost, right? So at this point, you get who you get, and you prepare as hard as you can. And you just got to remember, though, the confidence level can't get too high, because that's what happened last year, even if Florida State has a backup quarterback. So I do think it'll end up being probably Michigan and the Pac-12 champ. I think it'll be Michigan, Oregon in the Rose Bowl. That's my prediction.
Yeah, which would be amazing, because again, the Rose Bowl will never be the same again either, right?
Mm-hmm.
With this new expansion, so having the Rose Bowl end with 2 future Big Ten opponents, but again, a Big Ten versus Pac-12 in the Rose Bowl would be sweet. I agree with basically everything you said. I do think, as much as we go arguing over who should be ranked where, they're going to justify whatever to get the matchups they want, right? Like Georgia getting, you know what I mean? So, but I think the case could be made for Michigan at 1. I'm with you, though. When Georgia beats Bama, they would probably just move them right back anyway. But again, when you talk about, you brought up Washington. Washington has played close games regardless of who they've played.
Yep.
That win over Oregon at Washington, that's massive. But then you also barely beat literally everyone else you've played. It's crazy. So I at this point fully expect Oregon to win the Pac-12 championship. Yep. I think they're playing lights out right now. And again, just based on what I've seen and some of the metrics I look at, Washington is arguably like 9th or 10th in terms of analytics right now because of how bad their defense is. So, we don't have the rankings right now. Ohio State's going to drop out probably to, 6th. It'll be interesting as a 1-loss team if they rate them above Texas or Alabama, because if you're trying to figure out, does Ohio State have a backdoor, or who would move up with a conference championship win? I think Texas kind of got screwed by Oklahoma State beating BYU, because now they're playing Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship game instead of Oklahoma, which is their only loss on the year. And I think if they would have had a chance to avenge that loss paired with the Bama win, I think Texas would have had a really good case. Where now if they go out and stomp Oklahoma State, I don't know if that's going to have the same value. I'm with you. If Bama's a one-loss SEC champ, I don't see them getting left out. And then they're jumping Texas, the team that beat them and got crazy, whatever. Yeah, if we think Georgia and Michigan are 1 and 2 in some order, right, that's a lock. Washington's just going to be 3 at this point because you're not going to move Florida State above them. Florida State will have to play. I mean, Louisville's, I know they lost. Gosh, I forgot who they played now. It's been a really long weekend. Who did they lose to this weekend? Trying to mind blank. But anyway.
What was the question? Sorry.
Who did Louisville lose to?
Yeah, Kentucky.
Kentucky, thank you. So they don't have a weird backdoor in as a one-loss ACC champ, but they could still ruin Florida State's season. And that's where things get interesting, because if Florida State's undefeated and you think, okay, Ohio State's out, and then now either Oregon or Washington is out, you're not leaving out undefeated ACC champion, even though their quarterback was hurt, right? So there's a weird scenario where Michigan's 2 and they're getting Florida State at 3. But that's where I'm saying, like, I wouldn't be shocked if, Michigan's number 1 now, so Georgia gets the Florida State matchup or whatever. But yeah, for me, Michigan's obviously rooting for chalk this weekend. That's the safest bet. I'd say Florida State or Washington are the teams I want to play the most. And I think I want the collision course with Georgia in the national championship. I think they're the 2 clear best 2 teams. They're obviously the team most worried about. But other than them, for me, it's Oregon. I think Oregon looks really, really good. And that was a close game at Washington. And like I said, I expect them to win Saturday pretty easily. But Josh, do you have any thoughts on any of this?
No, I'm right there with you, boys. I totally agree with everything you said. I think I think if you're a Michigan fan, you don't really want chaos. I think you're kind of hoping for the status quo. Personally, selfishly, I would like to see Michigan go to the Rose Bowl because that's a bucket list item for me. So I'm thinking purely from selfish reasons. But I think the less amount of chaos you get this weekend, obviously the less likelihood of someone sneaking in that shouldn't be in there. So if everything goes as planned, I don't think the committee has the guts to drop Georgia from its first place spot. Obviously with a loss, yes, but right now, if it just continues on the path, there's no way that Michigan is going to jump Georgia, even with a arguably better strength of schedule and all that. I just don't think they have the guts. So you're hoping at this point, now the argument comes down to if Washington wins and Florida State wins, who's better and what does the matchup look like? Do you want Georgia to play Florida State, or do you want Georgia to play Washington as a 4 seed and is Florida State a 3 seed? I don't think. I mean, if they just go it from just the recency alone and say, well, you could technically make an argument for Florida State being a 3 seed if they continue to win out with a backup quarterback. Yeah. I think that speaks more to them than Washington beating Oregon twice. I think that kind of holds more weight. So now we're in the position where we're not really trusting computers. We're trusting the opinion of old people in a room. So,
which I'm always shocked by when the guys that still run the BCS simulations, the BCS computers and the old people in the room are remarkably similar.
Yeah, right.
Like, it's crazy. Like, we could have kept the BCS a lot of times. It's weird how that works out, but
Yep. So, I mean, and again, if we're talking from a Michigan perspective, it shouldn't matter who Michigan gets because you got to win.
Yep.
And you got to, if this team wants to win a national championship, you have to win all your games.
Yep.
And you have to beat Georgia because I have no doubts Georgia's going to be there at the end. So, yeah, I mean, you got to win your games. That's all it comes down to. So it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at the end of the day, as I always say, but you got to get there first, obviously, and you got to get through Iowa. But it shouldn't matter who you face. You got to win all your games. So,
but the point is, Michigan has come through this regular season under incredible attack, adversity, chaos, whatever you want to call what they've gone through, undefeated with assurances at this point from the Big Ten that they will not be pursuing any more punishment or more investigation. They've closed the investigation until the NCAA is done. And we know we're not going to hear anything from the NCAA in terms of affecting this season, right? So Jim Harbaugh is back in a weird way. Was it Blake that said battle tested? Brock, he kept using that term that we're battle tested.
Yeah, I think so.
They are, right? And now they don't have to worry about any of that noise anymore because, one, it's not coming anymore. They've gotten through it. They're going to go to Indianapolis and compete for the Big Ten championship, hopefully win it. And if Tony Petitti isn't a coward, he will be on that stage handing the trophy to Jim Harbaugh. I'm putting that out there right now. I do not know the man. If he is not on that stage,
that's a total coward move if he's not
there.
there.
You're a coward.
100% coward, yeah.
Sorry.
I almost find it unfathomable that he wouldn't be up there.
Mm-hmm.
But I also find it unfathomable that he did what he did a couple weeks ago. So who the hell knows at this point?
We'll see, but I'm just going to put that out there, right? But yeah, all of their goals, all of the unfinished business is there for them for the taking it. And Brock, like you said, that the TCU game, I think they learned something, right? And it's impacted this year. The Michigan State game in 2021, the Georgia game in 2021, like these losses that they've had over this 3-year stretch have built them for this moment. And we've seen them be able to overcome, whether it's something like the Penn State game in 2021, where players said they might not have won that game if it wasn't for Michigan State, or if it's overcoming something like the Zach Zinter injury and Ohio State's long drive on Saturday. It's built different at this point. They're built for this moment, and this is what they came back for. And now they're just allowed to go play football. And some people are still saying things, but like I said, if you look, most of it's at the footer of the article now. They're not leading with a lot of this stuff anymore because you said we couldn't win without the sign stealing stuff. You said you took Jim Harbaugh from us and we went out there. And as Chris Jenkins said, we did that shit. So anyway, we will be covering a lot this coming week. Obviously, there's a lot of recruiting news that we're collecting, and that's going to be coming out throughout the week. Josh and I are hoping to maybe do a podcast this week to kind of go over through all that. But of course, you want to go to michigan.rivals.com, Basic Blue Review. That's where we exist, covering Michigan for the Rivals Network, and make sure you're getting access to all of Josh's intel and our premium content. How long is the promo good for?
It runs through Monday.
Runs through Monday. I should have pulled that up before I got into this so I could share it. But we'll have that coverage going on. And then obviously we'll be talking about the Big Ten championship game at Indianapolis. All three of us will be in town. Brock and I will be working. Josh is going to have a good time.
I am. I know this is the first game I'm going to as a pedestrian, I guess.
As a pedestrian,
as a
civilian.
Yeah, as a civilian in years. So I'm looking forward to that. It's gonna be fun, and I get to fly in a private jet.
So wait, what?
Pretty cool. Yeah, my
bearing the lead. You didn't tell me this part.
I know a guy who knows a guy, and we're gonna go down there. So that's gonna be cool.
Shut up.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's gonna
cool,
be fun.
Man.
Yeah, I don't have to stay anywhere, which is awesome. I can come right back the same night instead of driving because I know how that drive home is from Indianapolis.
I was gonna say, Brock, we need to talk about that. You're staying in my hotel room. You are not driving 6 hours home. When did you leave? It was like 2 a.m. or something.
I got to my car at 2 a.m. It was awful. I'm not doing it again.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, good. Young buck. All right, let me put this up on the screen so I've got it. So yeah, right now we're running the promo through Monday. Rivals 2023. Use that promo code. You get 75% off your entire first year. We always run a really good promo around Black Friday this time of year. So that's our best of the year. 75% off gets you access to the premium content and then our message board community, the Den, which we were always proud of. We thought we built a nice little base and culture there. But we've seen just an explosion of folks joining us, obviously, with everything that's been going on this football season. And in the same way, I know it's cheesy, but you know your culture is good with your football team when you guys can come in and maintain it. All of our new subscribers have come in and right away just kind of picked up on the vibe, and we've really kept that going. So we're really super proud of the Den. And then Josh, again, I've kissed his ass a lot the last few weeks, but he's just been money with a lot of the intel. And then I work really hard on my stock report, so you should read that too.
Yes,
So.
absolutely. Read the stock reports.
Yeah. But other than that, we will be back. We're going to have to figure out, well, I guess I'll be home. Yeah, I'll be home by Sunday. But anyway, we will be back on Sunday, hopefully discussing a Michigan Big Ten championship.
Well, isn't it Selection Sunday?
Yeah.
So we can always just do it on a Monday too. We can always put it back to
cool.
So we will have something to talk about.
What time do they normally do that though? They do that at like 6.
I think it's at like noon. I think it's at
earlier
noon.
in the day.
Yeah,
well, you might be right. I think it is like noonish.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
Well,
early,
in that case, then we'll be fine.
Which, side note, I've seen them saying the Big Ten championship game is at 6:30. They're doing like Super Bowl shit. The game's at 8.
Yeah.
So they're trying to get
18 officially.
Yeah, and they're trying to get people in for their early pregame stuff, saying the game's at 6:30. It's at 8. Just
Hate
crazy.
It.
Has anyone won 3 straight Big Ten championships not in the game era? I don't.
Ohio State, I thought, didn't they win 4 in a row?
Playing in the game or like before?
Ohio State sounds like, because it's going to be no one from the
let's
West.
be honest. Yeah. Well, literally. If
I think
Michigan,
17, 18, 19, 20.
I think you're right.
Because
Actually,
Penn State won in 16.
Yeah. If
But
Michigan,
Yeah.
You're 100% right. Yep. Ohio State won the 4 before Michigan's 2. God, that's crazy. So, and then that's crazy. So, because Wisconsin won the first 2, but that was Legends and Leaders. So they went to the East. They went to the East West in 2014. And since then, it's been 5 for Ohio State, the 1 for Penn State, the 1 for Michigan State, and then the 2, and then hopefully 3 for Michigan. So just this era has just been dominated by those 3 teams. So it's going to be interesting with the Pac-12 groups coming over moving forward. But so anyway, again, michigan.rivals.com. All of you folks in here with the comments and taking part in the conversation. I know I recognize a lot of subscribers, so we appreciate you guys joining us here. If you're not, please head over there. The conversation's going week long. And then otherwise, make sure you're liking and subscribing and getting the notification bell on YouTube here. So when you know when we go live. Toilet paper. Nice. I always wonder, I got to listen back to this on audio only. It's got to be so difficult for people to know what the hell's happening.
Screenshot this and post it on Twitter. That'd be great.
I was going to say, there's been a few moments in this show where some screen grabs will be good for you.
Screenshot this and post it on Twitter. Tell how awesome this podcast is. And that they should become subscribers to Michigan Rivals. I forgot the name of our own website. It's the OSU distractions. I tell you, there's too many of them.
All right, then make sure too. We've got our Twitter handles up on the screen. Trevor McCue at Josh Henschke at Brock Heilig. Follow us all week for coverage. Otherwise, Michigan 3 straight over Ohio State, heading to Indianapolis to take on Iowa. And like I said, we'll be back next week with another episode of Hail to the Podcast.